Welcome to Mooney Reads. My name is Beck, and today I'm going to be talking about the books that I plan on reading in November. As you all probably know, November is Nonfiction November, so a lot of the books that I'm going to be talking about are going to be focused on that. The Skoden Readathon is also happening through the month of November, and that focuses on books by Indigenous authors. The Skoden Readathon is hosted by a Native Lady Book Warrior, and there is a bingo board involved. So I have a couple of books for that, and then several other things for Nonfiction November, kind of more broadly. The first book that I have is Red Paint by Sasha Lapointe, and this is a memoir. And I'm just going to read you the sentence in the description that kind of hooked me. It says, an Indigenous artist blends the aesthetics of punk rock with the traditional spiritual practices of the woman in her lineage in this bold contemporary art journey to reclaim her heritage. So that sounds super cool. And this is by someone who's in the area that I currently live in. So I thought this was extra relevant. The other book that I plan on reading for the Skoden Readathon and Nonfiction November is As We Have Always Done, Indigenous Freedom Through Radical Resistance. So this is kind of political nonfiction, and again, I'm just going to read a piece of the description. As We Have Always Done locates Indigenous political resurgence as a practice rooted in uniquely Indigenous theorizing, writing, organizing, and thinking. It makes clear that the goal of Indigenous resistance can no longer be cultural resurgence as a mechanism for inclusion in a multicultural mosaic, calling for unapologetic, place-based Indigenous alternatives to the destructive logics of the settler colonial state. So it sounds really awesome. It's blurbed by some cool people. The chapter names, I think alone are really, or at least enough to make me want to read the book. So I'm super stoked for this. And then the final book that I have for the Skoden Readathon, I don't plan on reading all of it, but I do have specific parts of this that I would like to read. Some of it might be nonfiction. I think there's a blend of fiction and nonfiction in here. But this is A Gathering of Spirit, edited by Beth Brandt. Now, this has readings from a lot of different people from a lot of different areas. There are 3 pieces in particular that I know I want to read. The ones that I know that I want to focus on are from people who have lived in the South. Do you mind? Do y'all have to fight right here? In particular, I'd like to focus on the readings from the people from the South. There is a kind of topical TBR reading list that I've been kind of putting together with Brent, and it focuses on experience of kind of Appalachian and Southern people, and because of, you know, the Trail of Tears and people, Indigenous people being forced out, I think it's harder to find experiences of Indigenous people from the South just because they've been forced to leave. But I did find a few in this book. Of course, I would like to read, you know, all of the things in it, but I'm kind of prioritizing those first. Moving from that, I have several others that I would like to read for Nonfiction November. Basically, all of my TBRs are like piles of possibilities. So whether or not I get to all of these is debatable. But I'm really excited about all of them. Nonfiction November is hosted by a book olive. The general gist of it is that you should try to read more nonfiction than usual, though she also provides some words that can be used as prompts. And I did kind of use some of these. I think if I wanted to, I could probably fit the books that I've already talked about with border, because talking about like borders and land and stuff like that, I think that you could kind of use that more broadly. These first couple of books I went to because of the prompt record. I have this little book on the album In the Airplane Over the Sea from Neutral Milk Hotel, and this talks about Neutral Milk Hotel in Elephant 6, the kind of record label. I'm super stoked about this. I've been super into this album for a long time. It has kind of like a cult following. So if you're into kind of indie sort of music, you probably know, or at least a little familiar with this album. But I'm excited to get into this. This, I think, is an oral history of that. And then the other book that I have that kind of goes along with the record prompt is Boys in the Void, a mixtape for my brother. This is a memoir. Again, I'm just going to read you a piece of the description of it. Boys in the Void blends music, cultural criticism, and personal essay to explore race, gender, class, and sexuality as they pertain to punk rock and straight edge culture. Using totemic punk rock songs on a mixtape to anchor each chapter, the book documents an intergenerational conversation between a millennial in his 30s and his Zoomer teenage brother. So I am super excited about this. When I first saw this book, probably closer to the time it came out, I was super interested in it, and I waited to get it, but I'm glad that I did get it, and I'm super excited to read it. In the first half of 2020, I read Laura Jane Grace's memoir, and she's the lead singer of Against Me, which is a punk group. So I'm excited to get another perspective on that, especially one that's kind of looking at culture and music kind of more broadly and digging into that. And then the last two books that I have could probably technically fit under the prompt border. Not that we necessarily need to validify that, but I like being able to fit stuff into the prompts. But the next one is A Small Place by Jamaica Kincaid, which I've had my eye on and have thought about reading for a while. It's a short book kind of looking at the British West Indies and the impact of British colonialism. And then the final book that I have is The Wages of Whiteness, Race and the Making of the American Working Class. I think that the subtitle gives you a pretty good idea of what this is about. This one, I'm not sure if I'll finish it this month or not. It kind of just depends on how everything goes, but I definitely want to start it. This is the first book that I'd like to read for one of the topical TBRs that I've put together, the one that I mentioned when I talked about A Gathering of Spirit, actually. While this doesn't focus on a particular region, a lot of the books that I'm planning to read kind of focusing on the South have a lot to do with class and race, and this looks like a good place to start kind of before getting into some of those more specific histories. I do have several other things that I might read, especially in regards to like fiction and stuff like that, but a ton of my reading has been like even more heavily based on my mood than usual, so I think that I'll just leave kind of my TBR at this, kind of focused on what I might read for the Skoden Readathon and Nonfiction November. If you've read any of the books that I've mentioned, definitely let me know about it in the comments, and tell me what you're planning to read for November. Thank you all so much for watching. Bye.